Well, I imagine we're not too far removed from remembering that complete and utter disaster that was The Rings of Power. I think we all remember how terrible that show was. And it may not be looking too good for them moving into the future. They may be looking at having a bit of competition. And I mean, competing with The Rings of Power is not a hard task. It's not hard to do better than them. But we have a new announcement from Warner Brothers that they are in fact planning new Lord of the Rings movies. And luckily, I can't stress luckily enough, they're not planning on remaking the Peter Jackson trilogy, because that would take a village idiot to even put that on the table. They're planning multiple movies similar to what they're doing with the War of the Rohirrim, except not animated. That's kind of the gist of it. I can't say I'm optimistic. That's gonna depend on who they actually get to work on the film. It would depend on what is said around the films. That's the only thing that's going to bring any optimism to it. We live in 2023. Unfortunately, most films are pretty shit, so it's hard to be optimistic in this day and age. But I suppose we'll find out a bit more about this and see kind of where they plan on going with it. But Warner Brothers Pictures is revamping the Lord of the Rings film franchise. And I mean, sooner or later it was going to happen. Sooner or later it was going to, we were going to get more movies. Because I believe the deal that Warner Brothers has is they have to actually produce Lord of the Rings stuff. That's kind of what's in their deal. But on a Thursday Eve earnings call, Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav announced that newly installed studio leaders Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi have brokered a deal to make multiple films based on the beloved J.R.R. Tolkien books. And I mean, just looking at the Rings of Power, they should know what not to do. The projects will be developed through Warner Brothers label New Line Cinema. The first Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is perfection, helmed by Peter Jackson, grossed nearly $3 billion worldwide. Jackson's follow-up trilogy, based on Tolkien's The Hobbit, not very good, but you can still watch them, whereas The Rings of Power, that's hard to watch again. Match those grosses. No filmmakers have been attached to the projects as yet, and that's really what I'll be waiting for to determine if I would be optimistic about this or not. It's really going to depend on who they get, because you can't go and get a J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. It's not really going to cut it, but I don't see that happening over at Warner Brothers for the fact that they can't afford for fuck-ups. They can't afford it. Jackson and his main Lord of the Rings collaborators, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, said Warner Brothers and Embracer have kept us in the loop every step of the way. So that's probably a good thing. I would just say, just get Peter Jackson himself to do every single film. That would probably be the better choice. But even if they're involved in the production of it, that's for the better. So it's probably a good thing that they're involved anyway. We look forward to speaking with them further to hear their vision for the franchise moving forward. So we just have to hope that they don't ghost Peter Jackson like Amazon did, because he knew, he would be able to look through their shitty writing. Freemode, a division of Embracer Group, made the adaptive rights deal for the books, including The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The pact will be billed under the name Middle-earth Enterprises. Notably, DeLuca and Abdi left MGM last year to take the helm of Warner Brothers. Their exit followed the acquisition of MGM by Amazon. The tech giant owns the TV rights to The Lord of the Rings and produced a single season of television at the gut-busting price of over $450 million, the biggest flop in history. But they say, following our recent acquisition of Middle-earth Enterprises, we're thrilled to embark on this new collaborative journey with New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers Pictures, bringing the incomparable world of J.R.R. Tolkien back to the big screen in new and exciting ways. We understand how cherished these works are, and working together with our partners at New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers, we plan to honour the past, look to the future, and adhere to the strongest level of quality and production values. And I mean, again, with Warner Brothers, they can't afford lack of quality. The amount of billions of dollars they're in debt. So, but again, this is all just stating things, really. They've got to show and prove. DeLuca and Abdi recalled that New Line had previously took an unprecedented leap of faith to realize the incredible stories, characters, and world of The Lord of the Rings on the big screen. But for all the scope and detail lovingly packed into the two trilogies, the vast, complex, and dazzling universe dreamed up by Tolkien remains largely unexplored. So my guess is, like with what they're doing with the War of the Rohirrim, is they're probably going to pick certain stories out of, I suppose, what they own, and that's kind of what they're going to be doing. It'd be like 2-hour, 3-hour films, I imagine. I don't imagine it will be trilogies and stuff like that. It would just be standalone films, I guess. That would probably be my guess for it. Inaugural projects and timelines were not immediately disclosed. The first Jackson trilogy, starring, so on and so forth, that trio of films was nominated for 30 Academy Awards and took home 17 trophies, including Best Picture for 2003's Return of the King. Warner Brothers has a packed upcoming slate, most of which probably ain't going to be no good. So it's really hoping they don't make the same mistake that they have with a lot of the stuff they have at the moment. We're going to have to kind of keep an eye on things. It's good that they have Peter Jackson involved, but again, it's going to come down to what writers are you going to hire? What directors are you going to hire? What type of shit are your directors and writers going to spout out? Those are really the big questions. And I mean, it's too soon to really tell what way this could go. But, again, we live in an era where you expect most stuff to be absolute trash. That's just the reality of the situation. But I'm not really surprised that they've announced new Lord of the Rings movies. Sooner or later, it was going to happen. And I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to be able to do a better job than the Rings of Power. We will have to see, but I will keep an eye on this sort of situation moving forward. New Lord of the Rings movies. Again, it's not really a shock. As I say, it's within Warner Brothers' deal that if they don't produce, something to do, like whether it's a TV show or a movie within like a certain time period, then like their rights will go back to the original rights holder, I guess. There's that many hands involved that it's hard to tell what rights belong to who. You've got Amazon, they have, they've now got MGM which produced the Hobbit trilogy, and it's a whole mess, shall we say. But it may not be looking good for the Rings of Power, at least. They may have a bit of competition. And as I said at the start of this, that is not a hard thing to achieve.